It's a humid, sweltering day deep in the Amazon basin in 1541. A massive Spanish expedition of 200 soldiers and thousands of indigenous guides is desperately hacking its way through the dense jungle. They aren't looking for land or spices. They are hunting for a city made entirely of gold. But as they push deeper into the cinnamon forests, the food runs out, the terrain becomes impassable, and the expedition begins to collapse. According to legends, somewhere in these highlands lay a kingdom so wealthy that its king covered himself in gold dust every morning. The value of this city eventually became the greatest obsession in history. For nearly 5 centuries, it sat hidden behind a wall of green, and many believed it was nothing more than a myth. We modeled the entire thing to show you how generations of explorers and modern archaeologists spent centuries searching for the city, and how high-tech LiDAR mapping and an old indigenous ritual eventually led them to the truth behind the most wanted golden city in history. When the legend of El Dorado first reached Spanish ears, it pointed toward Lake Guatavita, a high-altitude crater lake in the Colombian Andes. At the time, the location of the ritual was known, but over the next few decades, as explorers drained the lake and found only fragments, the legend began to drift, leaving a trail of rumors across the entire continent. The true location of El Dorado seemed to be lost forever, but the records of its wealth were never forgotten. According to accounts from the Muisca people, their leader would be rowed to the center of the lake on a wooden raft, surrounded by gold ornaments and emeralds, all of which were tossed into the water as an offering. All in all, the treasure in the lake alone would be worth at least $2 billion today. All someone had to do was find it. That's where British explorer Sir Walter Raleigh came in. He had spent his life at sea and was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I. With the allure of a golden empire sitting in the Orinoco Basin, Raleigh and his crew sailed across the Atlantic in search of Manoa. With little more than wooden ships and vague hand-drawn maps, they began their search in an area of modern-day Guyana, which had been mentioned in several accounts. But after months of searching and hundreds of miles of river covered, they hadn't found a single golden brick. To many, finding a city in this vast expanse of rainforest was an impossible task, but Raleigh had a secret weapon, the Discovery of Guyana manuscript. In order to prove the city existed, he documented every rumor of Lake Perim, a massive inland sea that appeared on maps for the next 200 years. Raleigh and his crew pushed further inland, but the explorers were now facing a huge problem. The canopy. Although the jungle looked uniform from the air on the ground, the explorers could barely see 20 feet in front of them. And so modern explorers came up with a genius yet high-tech solution. They attached a LiDAR sensor to a small plane that could be flown over the dense forest. This would redirect thousands of laser pulses through the leaves and shoot them down to the ground. Not only did this clear up the visual clutter of the trees perfectly, it had the added benefit of digging through the vegetation and revealing whatever stone structures were buried underneath the dirt. Then, one day in the 21st century, the digital map cleared and revealed an enormous geometric earthwork. Although it wasn't a city of solid gold, it was the first clue that perhaps a massive, lost civilization wasn't far away. More artifacts started to show up, like pottery shards, complex road systems, and evidence of terra preta, man-made fertile soil used to support large populations. To keep track of everything, they started building up a map of coordinates showing where each settlement had been found. After a while, a clear pattern started to appear on the map, and they came to the conclusion that the Golden Empire must lie somewhere along these trade routes. In order to find El Dorado, researchers were following a trail of ancient roads that seemed to be leading them to the motherlode of all settlements. But after years of searching the grid, many expeditions had failed to make any golden discoveries. Funding was running out fast, and if they didn't find a major site soon, they'd have no way of continuing the survey. But then, in the Upper Xingu region, researchers came across a stash of artifacts and huge defensive ditches. This find alone was proof of a massive urban complex, but it wasn't clear if it was the legendary City of Gold or just a large farming community. And so, they went back to the Spanish chronicles. Every single description of the Muisca rituals was recorded in these documents, along with the specific geography of the mountains. By comparing the terrain to the LiDAR data, they confirmed that the Golden King wasn't a myth. He was a real ruler of the Muisca people. The archaeologists began systematically mapping the sites and using carbon dating to prove their age. The search for the truth was back in business. With this influx of data, the team set out to find more settlements armed with satellite imagery. But just as they were starting to gain traction, many governments began claiming ownership of the land and restricting excavations, so the researchers started fighting back with conservation efforts. In the meantime, the teams continued finding more objects, a major find being the Muisca raft, a gold sculpture found in a cave that depicted the exact ceremony the Spanish had described. But just as interest peaked, the harsh reality of the jungle set in, as the green hell had claimed the lives of countless explorers over the centuries, including Percy Fawcett, who vanished looking for a similar city. Decades went by, and many continued looking without finding a city made of literal gold. The literal Golden City had run dry. Throughout the search, historians had often mentioned a mysterious document written by a survivor of the Orellana expedition. According to the document, the explorers had seen cities that stretched for miles along the riverbanks. It was never clear if they were exaggerating, but the LiDAR was proving there was more to the Amazon than just empty forest. Meanwhile, after years of skepticism, the scientific community finally accepted that the Amazon was once home to millions of people. But by the end of the 20th century, millions had been spent looking for El Dorado, and the literal gold brick houses still hadn't showed up. Every little object along the way had teased the seekers, and it still seemed like the truth had to be lying somewhere in the mud. But all that was about to change. In recent years, while scanning the Llanos de Moxos in Bolivia, the satellite sensors started lighting up. Researchers went down to check, and they came across several monumental mounds in a location southeast of the original search area. By plotting these on the map, a new civilization started to branch off from the known ones. They knew that the Golden King ceremony ended when the Spanish arrived, so it was possible that the people abandoned their cities and retreated into the deep bush. They followed this data for a couple of years, and it continued to reveal massive urban centers. Then, in 2022, a large but faint structure showed up on a new scan. Archaeologists immediately moved in to investigate. On a hunch, the team decided to wander off into a previously unsearched valley, and there it was. Sitting in front of them was a massive complex of pyramids and raised platforms with evidence of vast wealth and sophisticated engineering. There was no doubt that after centuries of searching, we had finally found the motherlode of Amazonian civilization. Amazingly, hidden within these sites were intricate gold pieces worth millions, but the real treasure was the city itself. Eventually, more than 20 major sites were discovered, and the legend of a high-tech jungle empire turned out to be true after all.